you know, you're taken care of, mom's taken care of, the family's taken care of. It's kind of like that sense of, okay, now I can go about my day and just focus on me for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have time with you today for a second.
Get right into the work. Yeah. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. We haven't actually met in person, but we're both performers here in New York. Though I've heard so much about you, I just want to start with maybe you introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your healing work.
So my name is Queen Ravenden. I am a licensed creative arts therapist, registered dance movement therapist, board certified holistic health practitioner, and herbalist. Owner of Mind, Body, Soul Virtual Wellness Center. Just released our podcast. I'm also an aerialist in the circus, so I'm twirling in the air most of the time, or stilt walking, or hula hooping, or roller skating, or whatever I get booked for that day. And I'm the mom of a 1.5-year-old. So when I'm not doing all of those different things, I'm spending time with my kid and just taking in the world as being something new and fun and exciting and open for, like, the world is your oyster, literally. Like, they can become anyone, and the world is for them to explore. So I'm excited about that. That's my favorite of all the things. I'm a mom.
Yeah. There's so much to say about just that, the newness I think that you're talking about. Not only is this new being here, this new soul, but we are renewed through the process of gestating and giving birth. New skin cells, new pelvis, new organ arrangement, new constitution, new desires, new gifts. I think it's just such a magical time of transformation. And speaking of gifts, I think that something that we're talking a lot about with the other moms on the pod is what we think are unique gift that we're bringing to the lineage of motherhood artist. If you could speak on what you think your special gift is that you're bringing, what would you say that is?
Understanding there was some mishap that happens where people feel that you can't have a career in the arts and have a child, right? I don't know when this shift happened, but I am honored to be part of the shift that is saying otherwise. And that's giving the example and knowing that I like to say, like, you can have it all. Like, you can have everything. Like, you're only here in this life, in this body once. And so whatever you feel that you want to do, whatever you're meant to do, whatever you're called to do, like, you can do it.
Yeah, the world is really our oyster, the baby's oyster. I feel like we are in such a place of transformation as a humanity as well. And it's being reflected in our individual experiences. And that is the gift to be here, right? We are the gift. Yeah, I read a quote the other day that said, if always finding yourself in darkness, you, my love, might be the light. Yes. Yeah, and it just rings true. So let's switch it up a little bit. I'm curious about the creative process and how we involve or don't involve our children. And I think just part of the research for me is exploring how we can include kids in our gigs or a new creative process, or perhaps this community that we're creating. So I'm just curious, have you been able to include your child? Or are there special games that you guys things that you've come up with together that are unique to your friendship?
I feel like you have
your relationship, your
dynamic as creative. Personally, I'm with my child almost all of the day, unless I'm out in the air, in which he can't climb up with me, even though he would love to. Because to climb up with me, like, I'll carry him on my back. But then we have mats, and it's not as dramatic, and lights aren't going, and it's not the crowd of people. So it's a very different atmosphere. But you have to bring them with you. So because I won't be able to condition if he's not conditioning too. I can't stretch if he's not there stretching with me. You know, I can't get on my aerial rig in my backyard if he's not in the back too. Mm-hmm. And I set up like a hammock and I swing him around. So because he wants to have the experience too, and he's learning from what we do. And I'm very much of the mindset that I'm not going to do mm-hmm. something that you can't necessarily do all the time with you. Like he's coming along with me, which also switches the things that I do around him, because I'm not going to do, I can't think of an example right now. But for example, my father came, so his grandfather came up, and he was eating something that the little one can't have because he's 1.5. You know, he doesn't have any back teeth. It's junk food. You know, things we don't eat. And he was very upset, of course. You know, toddlers, 1-year-old, very upset. But his understanding is, like, in our house, that we do all the things together and we share all the things. And mommy wants to eat something that I can't eat, you know, and everything is good for us. And kind of instilling, he's learning from me in that way. But he has his own gigs too. Like, he did a video for Conscious, like, Cooking Matters, where they show ways of adjusting from, like, eating no foods to eating, like, very pureed foods, and how to introduce food safely to your toddler. And so he did that video, and he's a music video with Save the Soil campaign that's been traveling around the world to save the soil. So he's in that video. He's in Bandolera, like, reggaeton music video, like, inside somebody's, like, fancy Mustang car, you know. So he's doing his own gig too. So he's integrated into my life. I don't do stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And that's for his fun too. So when he's older, he's making his own savings, and, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Was any of this modeled to you? Were you brought along?
And no. So my mom brought me everywhere, and she would say, I'd say, where are we going? She'd say, you're going with me, because this is old school Caribbean, like, so don't ask questions, like, we rolling. So absolutely. But my mom also wasn't in the arts, so that's where it was very different. But she liked to travel. We always went to see family. I'm going to see different shows and performances, even if she wasn't a performer herself. So wherever I was going. Oh, my mother is from St. Croix.
Nice. Where's your heritage?
My grandmother is Anguillan, and my grandfather is from St. Croix. You know, lineage goes back, but all the islands they're all connected, and everything stems from Africa, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe, and that's, I mean, a cornerstone of what I'm trying to do is create a platform for women from the African diaspora who are having this experience specifically, because I think we're performing artists, but it is so much of our culture, music and dance. A lot of the time, I don't want to make a general blanket statement, but if you're from Africa, it's in your DNA somehow to be a mover or a singer, or somehow be part of that ancient science that is through the expression of our being. And so I think there's something really unique to distill from that, and to kind of, I'm trying to create like I don't know if it's possible, but like from these conversations, moving like a workshop space where we can collaborate and bring all of our gifts and create a unique performance out of that speaks to us through our work, that to a wider audience, other mothers, bring them along. That sounds beautiful, into the community,
and it sounds like you're already doing it, because it all starts as a thought, and then into you taking the steps to manifest that, if that's what you want to do. That sounds magical.
Yeah, it is really so much of what I want to do, and Yeah, exactly. Like you said, doing it, taking the steps forward just by having the conversation. So thank you for joining in on the journey.
No, I
Yeah.
very distinctly
Did you always want to be a
remember
mom?
one of my friends asking me sometime in my 20s if I wanted to be a mom. And I'm like, yeah, you know, if it happens, it happens. It's a blessing. And if it doesn't, I won't be torn. And they were like, what do you mean you don't want to have kids? Caribbean friends, right? Caribbean friends. What do you mean you don't want to, you know, lineage? And most of the people my age already have kids, you know, because it's a common thing for people to have kids young back where I'm from. So I very much feel blessed to receive my young one in my life, but it wasn't something that I always knew was my purpose and that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I second that motion. Who for you was the most influential maternal figure, blood or not?
I find that all of my maternal figures are very influential. The women are leading the family. Like they always have been in my family specifically. My mother, my grandmother, my aunts, my great grandmother. Like it's always been the women who are like powering through. So I feel like it's all of them.
Yeah, that's unique though. I don't think for me that's not my experience to have the women be kind of leading
I wonder.
flock or
I'm not
decisions.
sure
Can you talk
why
about
that
that more
is.
a little bit?
I think that it's not like as I'm hearing you say like that's not your experience. I'm wondering, you know, maybe that's not a common experience. When I speak about my family leading, I mean us moving from St. Croix to Maryland and me now in New York. Like my mother was very much bringing us back to St. Croix, like making sure you know your family, making sure you know your cousins, making sure the distance isn't keeping us separated. And something that I always saw the men doing in that way. It seems like the men in my family have been more financial providers, and the women have been the keep the family together energy. So everyone's doing their part, but also if for whatever reason somebody's relationship doesn't work out, like a male-female relationship, it's usually the guy who disappears in the family, but the women are still connected, maybe because of children. I'm not sure why, but that's just been my experience in my family.
Like the women are kind of like the cultural keepers.
Just like remember where you're from. Remember, you know, this person who, you know, brought this person who made it here and who took this job and walked these miles and, you know, who are also women. Like all of these stories that I've heard in my family are all about women.
I love that. I love that. And I love the concept of migration and then having, because that's so much is the story of the American story, right? People migrating and then ways that I mean, the women in your family particularly were kind of like the pathway back to the root, the source, your culture, the traditions, the values, maybe the food too. Always the food, honey. Yeah. I mean, I definitely can relate in that sense. Food and the conversations through food, I think, are just so much. Food, what you're eating can tell you so much about a person and where they're from. And so, yeah.
I had
it's
a
in the
thought
sauce.
about us being mothers in the creative arts field, but also new mothers who had children around the time of the pandemic, and how I don't necessarily know a lot of mothers who are artists, right? Many artists that I know aren't parents, but many of the artists that I do know that are parents had children during the pandemic. And one of the reasons for me personally was because there was no work as an artist. And this was the only opportunity that had came where I wasn't going to be flying in the air for work. So this was the time where I felt like I could have a baby. So that was how that showed up for me, but everybody's different.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. I was always traveling. I was never really in one place long enough to have deeper sustained relationships in that way, and I was fine with that. I too was like, if I have a kid, if I would love that, but if I don't, you know, I'm fulfilled, because part of my intention and my path was to live a life that my ancestors, the women in my family, didn't have the opportunity to, because they did have kids so young and they were tied to like doing jobs like being maids and helping other families, white families, raise their kids, and or being in arranged marriages. So it was a big deal for me to have the experience of being a performer and travel to 22 countries. So I was like, okay, I'm fulfilled. But then pandemic happened and I was like, but I'm not going anywhere anymore. Like, I can have a baby now. And then boom, it happened. There's a question coming from one of the viewers. Would you mind if I brought it up? The question is, how involved would you like the performance community to be in the upbringing of your child? I was actually just speaking
right before our call. I was speaking with my aerial duo partner, and we were speaking about homeschooling, because I want to homeschool my child, and it came up today as I stumbled upon, unconsciously, I didn't mean to, a video of the body camera of one of the police officers as they were going into the school in Nashville. And I just turned off, this was right before I called, so I was like, I have to turn this off, and kind of reinstilled and reminded me that, you know, where is a safe space for our children? And I feel that my child is safest with me. And so it kind of reignited that flame in me to want to homeschool and have a lifestyle where I can do that. And then my area partner was like, and I'm going to be a part of that too, you know, and I want to help, like, how can I support, like, what can I teach them? How can I support you, whether it be in a day off, whether it be in teaching a class, whether they're also a dancer. So maybe they would have their own dance class, because they're more technically trained than I am. And as I bring my little one everywhere, I bring them to rehearsals. I bring them into open workouts where they see someone hanging from their hair, that's hanging from someone's mouthpiece, that's hanging in their mouth. And he's just, he's taking the world in. And so, sorry, Phil. And so community is everything. Community is everything. And we have community as artists. And our children deserve to share that community too.
Yeah, I agree. I think I bring my son along to different shoots and different performances because I want this to be part of his life. And that's part of why I'm doing the work, this work in particular, building MUVA community, because I don't want to have a life that is separate. And that's another reason why I'm trying to move away from nightlife, because for me, where I'm at, it really doesn't feel like it fits anymore. I want to be there for bedtime. That's one of the most precious times for me, the bath, having dinner, and getting my son into bed. And I know it's a special time for him too. And the rest is so essential and something that I treasure.
Yeah.
And I encourage my friends, my family, my community to have yes, and learning how to rest is such an essential part of growing up. So yeah, creating MUVA community and inviting in, though, I feel like having the showcase too is inviting in members of the community who don't have kids to be like, hey, look at what we're creating. You could be a part of this. You could support somehow and be part of what we're doing. It's kind of an invitation and conversation in that way. So definitely, I think that aspects of the performance community and people who want to support.
They wouldn't be there.
Feel like, you know, people who don't really want to be there. They wouldn't, right? Yeah. So that, you don't matter. That's fine. Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you, Caesar. Let's see. There's another. Oh, it's not a question. Oh, well, that's sweet. It's a fan from Turkey saying they've been following me since I was on The Voice in Turkey. And that's great. I'm a mom. Thank you. Yeah, still in, and now I'm singing and being a mom. Yeah. So I got like two more questions for you if you have a moment. A little more. Um, One thing that I feel like, and tell me if you're willing and ready to take a little turn. I want to not focus so much on the positive or like the positivity side of it, because I think that there are some darker aspects, especially. I agree with you. I want my kid to be close, and I think I just want to talk about maybe maternal figures in your life that showed you how you don't want to do it, or experiences that you had that maybe you're shaping your reality because you're deciding consciously that I am creating this version of an experience that I want to have for myself and my child. Does that resonate with you? Can you speak to that at all, about maybe the more shadowy parts of motherhood? Because I think that's a very real part of being a mom, the dark mother, and I want to honor
I think
her.
that
So
the women
do you
in
have
my
anything to
family
say
have
in that
always been very
respect?
hard workers. They also instilled in me the gift of being a hard worker, but also the curse of being a hard worker, right? And sometimes you work so much, or you have such a demanding schedule, that you don't get to do other things like spend time with your children, whether like you have to send them to grandma's house, or you have to hire a babysitter, and you miss out on these moments. But you're also like, but I have to provide for my family, and because I'm also the provider and mom, and all of these different things. You take so many roles in these spaces, and it's important to find balance for yourself. And for me, and my desire to have more time with my child and to homeschool in the future, like I won't be able to work at the same mindset that I used to have, and be away all of these hours and traveling up to all these different places, and like that's gonna have to shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's similar for me, just seeing how, because I feel like the hard work also, in my
Mm-hmm.
experience, has led to hard dynamics, tough dynamics, because there is no room for the play that's so
Rest, as you were
essential,
speaking about.
or just the tenderness and rest. Yeah. Yeah. Naps. I've always like, and then my mom, because I literally, since he's born, like put timers for the naps, like when he's supposed to have his rest. And she's like, well, he'll sleep when he's tired. I'm like, no, I have to teach him how to sleep when he's tired, because he'll just keep going. And even if he's tired, and then the cortisol kicks in and he thinks he's got energy, but really his brain is wanting that rest and his body is needing it for him to grow. So like having that kind of conversation, rubbing up against like, oh, we
Also,
always did it this way. And
different
I'm like,
child.
just
They're a different
watch
child, and
and
you're a
you'll
different,
see. Like,
different
just give me
times.
and time. Yeah, very much so. Very much that. Okay, one last question. I ask this to everybody. So let's say you're writing a book and it's a how-to guide for
Okay.
performing artist mothers, Black performing artist mothers to come. I, I'm shaping the words like around like it's the art of blank blank blank. You don't have to say it that way, but I kind of like that framing because it is so much a production sometimes, for lack of a better way to say it, and it is an art form because it's a craft, because every day you're working at it and trying to find that grace and the ease and whatever it is you're calling into your life. So if you write that
The
book,
art
the art of,
of
what would it be?
doing something by yourself, but also with your 1-year-old.
Say that. Yeah.
how?
It's very much how to figure out how
gotta get done. But how are you gonna do it? And also have your little person with you. It's a skill that sounds like obscure if you're not a parent. Because when you're a parent, you're like, no, that makes sense. Like they're always with me all the time and I have to do the things, but I also have to have them. How am I gonna do both at the same time?
Totally. I find a lot of it is like trying to make him feel included, but also a minor distraction, like so he's not
dishes has turned into him playing in the sink with water, and I'm the dishes. But I have to get all the glass things out first, so he doesn't get the glass things, and all the sharp things have to be out of the sink and in the back where I can wash them. So you know, you figure.
Oh, I totally know. He loves it when the dishwasher is open, and I'm like, boy, because he's not walking yet. So very much like, all right, I'll give him a plastic lid to something so he feels like he's doing something with me. He is learning. He's very much is learning and picking up on it all. And that's why I think we're here, because I think finding community and like leaning on each other and finding that common ground is going to help us get to where we need to go and